Kayla.
All right. Hey, everybody. Matt Stevens here with the Fort Church. Wanted to record a conversation today about race, justice, and religion because of the events of the last week and it's going on in the culture. And I thought I could make some kind of Facebook post, but I prefer conversation. And so that's what we're going to do today. I've got some friends here with us. Kayla, of course, is here, and Kayla, you got some friends that are part of a group that you are a part of. You want to tell everybody about Vessel?
Yes, so Vessel Music Group is me and my lovely friends here. We get together and we write worship songs and we sing them and worship together. And the goal is to spread that music to other people. So I have my friends here. Would you like to introduce yourselves, guys?
Yeah, I'm Patricia, dear friend of Kayla's, and I'm so excited to talk about this topic with you guys.
All right, awesome. We'll go on around the room.
I'm Reese. And I'm Vessel.
And I'm Joe. Yeah,
So, just a little bit more about you guys, other than your names. That you want to tell us, because I know some of you are involved in ministry and have done different things in ministry in the past. At some point in our conversation, we're gonna have a broader conversation, but I also want to get around to just thinking of. I want to think about this in Christian terms, as Christians, and so just a little bit more about apart from Vessel, which is awesome, and I'm looking forward to more and more music coming out from them. Any day now, we'll have stuff released, right? All right, awesome. And so just maybe a little bit more of your background or where you're from. Yeah. Interestingly, over here on this, we got New Yorkers over here.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, but I moved down here when I was 13 years old. So I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else, and I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Georgia peach in that sense.
Yeah, I say the same thing.
All right, very good. All right, a little bit more about you, Reese.
Well, I'm a Grady baby. So, originally from Atlanta, but I've been here since I was 13.
Okay.
I'm a worship leader at New Birth Outreach Church. And a whole lot of other stuff. It's going to take a long time. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Josiah?
Yeah. I'm a military brat. I've got 4 siblings. I'm a twin, 2 sets of twins. Shout out to my homies there. But, I moved around a lot. My dad, like I said, my dad was in the military. Adareth is the church that I attend. Pastor Donnie. I'm an artist. I love languages and people, and yeah.
All right, good stuff. Cool. Good stuff. All right, so if somebody's watching this later, maybe people are unaware why this topic is so right at the forefront of what we're thinking about. Of course, there's a wash of stuff on social media, but not everybody is tuned in like that, and not everybody is following the news, and they catch little pieces of stuff. And so, what I thought we'd do is just I got a little clip of the story of Ahmaud's case, and it's just a clip from. Station out of Atlanta, but I thought it was just a good summary of what was happening. So let's watch that, and then we will we'll have our conversation. So let's do that.
Lindsay, the video recorded on someone's cell phone is difficult to watch. It shows the moment in February when 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery is killed.
And you kept. Oh Lord. Oh, rest in peace.
He looks like he is simply jogging towards the men with guns who are stopped in a white pickup truck. This is in Brunswick, Georgia, near the Florida line. And according to police, the 2 men had chased him to this spot, thinking that he was somehow connected to recent break-ins in the neighborhood. According to this police report, the 2 men are a father and son, the 2 men with guns, Gregory and Travis McMichael. The son is the one seen on camera shooting the young black man at least once at close range. And what has really hindered this investigation is the following fact. The father, seen in the video inside the truck, is a former investigator with the local district attorney. Because of this, the DA in the county where this happened had to send the case to another DA who also had a conflict of interest for the same reason. and now there's a third DA who is working this case. The father and son told police that they were making a citizen's arrest and that the 25-year-old fought back, which isn't clear in the video, and that he was shot and killed in an act of self-defense. But the young man was unarmed, and according to his family, he loved to jog and was out running just a few miles from his home. The latest prosecutor, who only started investigating this case on April 13th, decided today that this case needs to be put before a grand jury. But because of COVID-19, that won't happen until the courts reopen in the middle of June. And no one has been charged in this case at this point. The young man's family wants the truth and justice for their son. His friends believe that the white men with guns mistook him for someone else. There are calls for the U.S. Justice Department to investigate.
So at this point, this is a day before an arrest was made. But at this point, the two men have been arrested. After the video comes out, after attention is drawn to it, the arrest happened. So I think, first of all, everybody's got, I think, an emotional reaction to that. And before we get into too much, high level thinking, I mean, just how do you feel, as you're reacting to that? And I know there's been several days of reacting. Just y'all jump in wherever.
So immediately, when I actually did it, when I found out we were about to record midweek, and I was sitting over there, and I was just scrolling on my laptop, like, what? Like, what is going on? What's happening? And so it really didn't hit me until, after we did all that stuff, and I got home and just really, researching and finding out what actually happened. I immediately just felt a tension in my body that hasn't left yet. And because it's not something that's of random occurrence, this has happened before, still happens, has been happening for years, but we have the technology to have the proof now. It was just something that was like it's never going to be something that's not heavy, I know some people have made that point, I'm not surprised, or I'm not, but each time it's just as much of a loss. Every time it feels the same. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I was processing it and processing it.
Yeah, and for me, again, we just find these things out via social media. So you see an article or you see a video, and honestly, I don't have the stomach to watch the video. But just reading the details, my heart immediately just broke for his mom. And having a little boy of my own, I just feel just tired and sick to my stomach, every time I think about it. And all I feel initially is just heartbreak. Mm-hmm.
So, having experienced some racism myself from my family, I did a lot of research on chattel slavery when I was younger and all this, that, and the other. So, seeing it initially, you just kind of, I don't know, I felt even though I'm not hopeless, I felt a sense of hopelessness. This is never going to stop. Mm-hmm. It will... it's just it just keeps showing up, and it's based in ignorance. It's based in all teaching from generation to generation and just all this other kind of stuff. And then the fact that it was going to be covered up, it was going to be suppressed. That's right. Had there not been documentation, it's just with the whole Dr. King thing, that would not have... we would not be where we are had there not been cameras on the stuff that was happening down there in Selma. So I just felt this sense of hopelessness, and I think for me to transition back to a healthy, or while trying to transition back to a healthy state of safety, I think to function properly in any society with other people, you have to at least have some sense of safety. Mm-hmm. So that you're not on red alert all the time and terrorizing all the people around you. So I have had to kind of lean into the faith that, okay, God is for me and God will protect me. But as far as like faith in society overall, it's just another bit of evidence. You know what I'm saying? It's another bit of evidence to just further prove that people do what they want to do. Yeah. So, and I don't know if that's colored negatively or not, but that hopelessness, that feeling of hopelessness, is what I initially took from it.
Yeah, I think if you were having trouble trusting before, right? Mm-hmm. Trusting police or trusting the government or trusting the people around you, this does not help. Every time this happens, it's just another mark against that. It just makes it that much harder, I think. Yeah. Just how you want to jump in? Listen, we can go real free form and all this. Y'all just jump in as you want to. Okay?
For me, my initial response, it was just weird. It's, every memory that I have of an instance where I was racially touched in a sense, it's kind of just like all the words, whether I was in church or whether I was in my home or whether I was at the park. I was like just all the different words, just like the devaluing, just the cutting myself down for the sake of making sure that where I was societally wasn't making a negative mark, making sure that all those memories just came into my head. And then I thought about my little brother who has a similar build to him. You can't really see his face, but I see my brother falling and hitting the ground. And I just get because my brother, he runs all the time. And I'm just he can just go running. Mm-hmm. And I could say bye to him and that'd be the last time that I see my brother. His birthday is on February 14th. So it was very interesting that he died on February the 23rd. And the fact that we're just now getting the information just puts back into my perspective that it just is this boiling, hot, visceral anger that I have, not even so much as for people, but just for the people that have contested the reality of an African American or a Black experience. And not even so much as in the world, because I separate that notion entirely. The world's going to do what the world's going to do.
Right.
I don't ever. If a person outside of the faith calls me the N-word or says anything, I don't get angry like that. It's when I'm in church. It's when I'm in instances with people who say that they love me. It's in those instances where I really question whether or not we really are fighting for the faith in a sense that really encompasses an equality and a peace and a safety that doesn't one up at each other when it comes to these situations. Mm-hmm. This was clearly wrong, but how many times has this happened? Where we've been racially insensitive, where we have been very, very dogmatic about, okay, this is right biblically, and choosing scriptures and choosing perspectives that really align with our political alignment. Wow. And at the end of the day, it's just this perspective okay, I'm Black, but first I'm Christian. Yeah. And I have to choose that I'm Christian in an instance. But then that may not always be the case when it comes to politics and race. We're Republican, we're Democratic, we're American, we're patriots. You know what I mean? It's all these situations have just been showing me and have been making me feel that I just really just need to discard all those notions of what it means to be human, and just it really makes me really want to lean into how God sees situations. Yeah. Because that's where true justice is. That's where true equality is. That's where true love is. And that video just did a number on me. Did a number. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people watch and they have different. Everybody's got some emotional reaction. I think one of the sad things is that. Whenever something happens, people feel like, well, I gotta side up, pick my side, right?
Right.
And so immediately people are, once they're over the emotional reaction to it, then they're going, all right, well, now who did what and what was, all these things. And I think that that maybe we don't spend enough time on the emotional part, and really, and for me as a pastor, what I want is for me, and my, the people that I pastor and lead who are Christians to have the kind of compassion that they are really trying to be empathetic and really trying to feel the emotions that somebody else has when they see something like this or they hear about it again. And Josiah, you mentioned your own experience in the past, and I think maybe that would be helpful. And I don't want to ask you to do anything that's painful or that you don't want to share. But I just think for I know that people who are watching now, who may have reacted differently. Who just the initial emotions that they have may have been very different because they went, well, I'm on the guys in the truck side, because we immediately pick our side. And so just your experience that you bring to it, why, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
And
Patricia.
just to speak to that, I think it is important to say that you can be upset that someone died.
Yeah.
I don't care what the reason is, what the circumstances are behind that. It is important to understand as human beings, when we lose someone, that is a permanent, final thing. Yeah. And we have every right to feel emotional about that fact alone. Yeah. And so just kind of start there, just start from a human aspect and just say, you know what, I feel upset because this person is gone forever. And until we walk into eternity, I won't be able to see them until that time. And then from there, build on the case and on the facts and on, but just as human beings, we just need to have empathy. And I just feel that that's important to note.
Yeah.
I think that in my life, like you were talking about having to pick sides, because I am not just one race. Generally, I ain't even gonna go into that. I don't usually have to choose. Somebody's gonna make me pick a side, and maybe not in this day and age, at this age, or whoever I communicate with, but definitely growing up, you have to pick a side, or that you more like your white side, or you more like your black side, or don't deny your white side, or don't deny your black side. Like anybody has any type of permission to be able to tell me who I am and what I need to pick. But I think something that you kind of have to acknowledge, because when I initially, like from 0 to maybe like 10, I grew up with my mom's side of the family. Like everything that they embraced, I embraced, and I can understand how some people may side with the people on the truck, saying, well, would they have rights, and they should have been able to execute their constitutional rights, and we have the right to bear arms, and you know what I'm saying, and protect my own. You know what I can understand the logic behind it. I can understand the sense of wanting to defend your property. Like we grew up I'm talking about dirt road, and then a longer dirt road, and then a longer driveway dirt road. Like being able to secure your own, being able to make sure, my stuff is together, this is my land, and yada, yada, yada. I get it from how I was initially raised. But I think, and especially if you look at it from a perspective of having a certain privilege to where you don't have to acknowledge that. I think that's where I don't want to make it seem like it's an outcry, but I guess it is. Like, we're not trying. I don't think any person that feels wounded by this event is saying what you should do. Well, some people may be, but my perspective on it's not what you should do. It's, could you take a step outside of what you think what you believe your rights are, to just look at this other side of the story, because and just acknowledge that that black people, like there's an entire group of people that were systematically oppressed, and that this is still some of the residual stuff that comes from it. Because if they would have been Hispanic, it still is a marginalized population that this has happened to. And so it's kind of stepping outside of what you believe your rights are into, like Patricia was saying, being compassionate about another person, thinking about, this was somebody's son, as opposed to this was just a person that's in a different group than I am. Right. And I should be able to have these rights. And so I have to align myself with whatever gives me the privileges that go along with these rights. It's requesting that somebody takes a step outside of that for just a second to see the other side of the how we feel or how anybody feels about it. So I think it's noteworthy to say that I can understand where it comes from, but I feel like especially as Christians, if, how can you love God but not love your brother who you see every day? Like taking even just in your head, taking that time to see a different perspective, to say, am I right? Yeah. Let me question, because I think any Christian, if you're honest with yourself, you have to question what your motives are. Almost every day, you have to question, am I right? Am I not right? And then defer to God, because we don't always get it right. I don't care how many of the visible behaviors that we're able to display consistently to let everybody else know that we're a Christian. Yeah. It's the condition of the heart. So I understand cognitively, but emotionally I identify in a different place. But that's all that I would encourage anybody to do, is to understand, but still give the other, you know what I'm saying? Give it the benefit of the doubt, and not because you think somebody earned it or but because God said it, Yeah.
Yeah, I think that point, we don't need to go too quick through that point, that the first reaction for a Christian should never be, what about me? Like, what about my life? What about my stuff, right? That should never be our first reaction. And you talk about that need to protect our stuff or our place or our people. But really, that's who we are as Christians, is that we are about others first, right? And so to have your first reaction when somebody is, Patricia's exactly right. I mean, when somebody loses their life, when a mother loses their child, right, and family loses somebody they care about, if your first reaction is, well, he's probably up to no good, no, that's a wrong reaction. That's a wrong reaction. There should be in us as Christians, whatever is happening there, it is broken and bad, and somebody has lost their life, and there should be some heart, some compassion that goes out from us as Christians. But y'all pick up where.
For me, looking at the situation, my first thought comes back to like the reality that I'm always having to explain something that I think is very simple. What was his name? The prophet Saul. Was it Saul? Samuel. And the Lord told Saul, what was it? The Lord told Saul, do not look on the outer appearance, for I have rejected him. For the Lord looks at the heart, but man looks at the outer appearance. And there's just this acknowledgement that this skin, the fact that I'm a man, the fact that I'm burly, the fact that I'm big, the fact that I'm 6'3", that all these variables that just join to make up who I am, does affect the waters does affect it differently. It affects my experience, and I always feel like I'm always having to justify why I choose to be conscious of it. And the excuse that I'm always given, or the Christian thing that I'm always experiencing, is that, oh well, God doesn't. Oh well, you're thinking that incorrectly. God sees us all the same. We're all the same. Like, I don't see this. I don't see that. I don't see this. And that's some of the stuff that kind of goes into my head when I see that body hit the ground, is you really are choosing to disassociate yourself with a level of compassion that you can have for another human being when you refuse to acknowledge what God has created first and foremost. And when you do that, you consequentially dehumanize that person. you dehumanize that person. Every time I make a job application, or every time I put in my Social Security, every time I do anything that has to do with the government, which is everything, they have these things on there where they say white, non-Hispanic, Caucasian, or whatever, or Asian, or I'm always having to choose, and so is all of us. Mm-hmm. So it's the presence of knowing that you go through the same applications as I do, and yet you're telling me you do not. That aspect of our reality doesn't exist shows me that in the church there's a fracture, there is a dissociative way about dealing with people of color. And I always feel like it's going to take someone like me to die. Like, it's always going to take someone like my brother, or like, how far are you going to allow a carnal perspective you have concerning your fears, that carnal fear you have? How often are these situations going to keep popping up before we're able to sincerely have a conversation about who we are and what we mean to each other?
Yeah.
I think there's, okay, so in conversations that I've overheard and had with my family, or people that are around my family inside the house, that's not under scrutiny of the public, like in the back.
Well, you don't have to worry about what you say.
Yeah, they don't have to, and, I'm not considered black. I'm just Nikki's kids. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, Nikki's kids are half black, but they're just Nikki's kids. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So nobody's really checking for me to be, racially sensitive.
Gotcha.
So, what the point of that is, you have to apply an extra layer of emotional work to have that perspective, to do that. It takes okay, I'm going to hire you. We're going to do da-da-da-da-da-da. But if there's a whole nother level that I have to consider, it's work. Yeah. It's emotional work. It takes another level of expanding kind of your mind, the way you think, the way you do things. And I think that's work that sometimes people don't want to extend that to go beyond that. And that's not all people, it's not all the time, but I think even, because, colorism is worldwide too. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to minimize the racism in America by any means, but I feel like it is an issue that is also worldwide. You know what I'm saying? Between people of different shades, and it is everywhere. So it's not to invalidate it, but it's just to kind of acknowledge that it's something that is widespread, and it takes another level of you applying yourself to actually think it through, or to think, well, they have a different color, they have this, they have that. I might need to be a little more sensitive in how I say this, or how I approach this issue. Or maybe if I say something that comes off racist or classist or whatever else, I messed up in this sense. So next time I can do it this way. It takes a lot of humility to learn how to communicate with somebody that you might, your way of processing and thinking and all that stuff is different. It takes trial and error when you have not been raised that way. And a lot of people don't want to humble themselves to submit to that process because, I don't have to.
And that's the privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, but nobody will acknowledge it, because then now it becomes, I'm right, you're wrong. Exactly. And so I'm going to be on this side because it makes me feel more right and more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it's an uncomfortable thing, but me choosing to suffer through that uncomfortable way, that is the way of Christ. We choose to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. There has to be heart change, right? And there's going to have to be some hard moments that you come encounter, because a lot of things that you guys are talking about are not things that most people are going to identify with, right? You're talking about that extra level of emotional energy it takes to think about how I'm going to present myself, or how I'm going to, be in this situation that I don't have to worry about, right? And so it takes some effort, right? But really, it comes down, for me, the way that I've been impacted is through relationship. Yeah. Right. And so, like, there's a comment. I want to share this with you. This is LaSara, who one of our folks here at the church, and she has 2 college-age sons who are athletes, and they're home now, and they're staying in shape, right? Because they're away from the team, and anyway, I'm gonna put it back up there just so folks have time to read it. It disappears automatically, but LaSara talks about how devastated and how hopeless she feels. And I saw something that that Randy, their father, posted, talking about how he sends them out into rural Alabama to go and jog, and he wants them to put on Army PT shirts so people think they're young soldiers, so they present themselves in a certain. They have to do that work.
Yeah,
they have to do that work.
Yeah, that conditioning.
Now, most people, right, are not going to have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Most of our church not going to have to think about that. What I want is for our church to go, I love LaSara. I love those kids. I've known them for years. They have to think about it, right? And so to have that compassion that goes out,
Yeah. And I was just going to say, number one, just to kind of like help the church navigate, especially with conversations about not seeing color or seeing color. Like, we have to understand that God was intentional. God is intentional. And so he's creative. Like, we worship a very creative, a very smart, a very wonderful God who loves us and who created us with diversity and with different cultures and different languages. And we see in Scripture at the end of time, the beauty of heaven is what? That every tribe, every nation, every tongue worshiping before the King. And so this is our hope. Like, that is our hope. So when we are navigating questions about how do we humble ourselves, how do we remain intentional? We do see color because God created color. We see it everywhere. It is beautiful. It is wonderful. And we embrace those things. And we take on Romans 14, which says that we live our lives out of love for our brother. We live our lives. No, I'm not talking about like political correctness. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not feeling like you can't say certain things. You will be able to say certain things with what you just said, relationship.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you just have to build on that. But the first place to start is number one, to acknowledge somebody as God made them. And all of it, whether it's their dark skin, their light skin, their blue eyes, their brown eyes, however God created that person, acknowledge the beauty that is that person. And then from there, build relationships so that we can break down barriers and break down walls, and where we can feel comfortable to have honest, tough conversations. But it takes time. And it takes honesty, it takes humility, and that's basically how I feel.
Yeah.
And to go off of that, I want to just reiterate that you don't have to be afraid that you're going to be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
When you say something.
Oh,
Because I made a post, I think it was on Friday, and I was saying how the gist of it was that your silence speaks for you when you don't say anything in support or against. And I know that a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but some people feel like it's just Facebook, it's just Instagram, it's just social media. It doesn't, it doesn't show like what I'm toiling with inside. And you're right, it doesn't show that, but at the same time, if that video wasn't released on social media, those men wouldn't have been arrested.
Right.
If people weren't in uproar over what they saw online, we wouldn't be where we are today. It would have been swept under the rug. So I want to say, even if you are having a hard time of knowing what to say, or you don't feel like you can say anything, you can't, because there aren't any words that are going to sum up everything, that's going to like put a nice bow on it so that you can encompass everything, all the hurt, all the pain that this event has caused. No one is going to be able to do that. But when you say, I stand with the Black community right now, and I'm devastated that this happened, or my condolences for the family, or I'm praying with you, I'm standing with you. Just those words in itself provide so much comfort for somebody like me who is around people who do not look like me a lot of the time.
Exactly.
A lot of the time. It makes someone like me feel safe. And people around me, I know they love me. I know they care for me. I know they see me for who I am. But when you have an event like this that touches the heart of someone like me, and you care for someone like me, you speak about it. You put it out there, how you feel. You put it out there that
You
I'm
create
with
this
you.
space.
Yeah.
Because when there's silence, you're not given the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because of what history has said.
Right.
Not just in history books, but in our everyday lives.
Experiences.
Like, it's not working for you. It's not. You're not assumed to be in support. You're not assumed to be, sad about it. You're not. You're assumed to side with who you look like.
Yes.
That's
Right.
what's assumed. So the silence is not saying, like, oh, because I didn't say anything, like, it's a judgment. Like, no. This is just how it is. Like, that's just how it comes forth. And because there are people who I care about, who I know care about me, and who have walked me through this with me, when it's happened before, when it happened to Mike Brown, when it happened to all the other hashtags that are out there, that have stood with me before and that have said, Kayla, I am so sorry. I don't know how I can help, but whatever I can do, I'm there, and have been there with me in person. But at the same time, if those same people don't voice that, there are so many people that I don't know in person. So many white people whose words I've seen online, whose words I've seen in support of us, or whose pictures I've seen, protesting or anything, that have provided me comfort, that's instilled a hope in me. Like, everybody that's white doesn't feel this way.
Exactly.
Everybody that's white
doesn't
isn't against
agree
me.
with it. Yeah, exactly.
Even though I should know that because I experience more of that than I do racism, but the racism is still there.
That evidence requires reassurance.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it does.
So I would just want to encourage anyone out there who's like, just because I haven't said anything about it doesn't mean that, I don't care. Still do it.
Yeah.
Still say something. There's nothing you can say that's going to make it go away or to make us completely be reassured that this thing will be taken care of. Like, there's nothing that you can say that's going to put it all in perspective, but you can show your support by just saying something.
Yeah.
In the same way, you said you could just make a Facebook post, but you'd rather have a conversation.
Yeah.
There are other people that feel that way as well, but do both.
Yes.
Do both. Because going that extra mile, like you said, it's that compassion.
Yeah.
It's just plain human compassion. And I know to some people it doesn't seem like it would have such this effect on us, but it does.
It does.
It's 2020, yes, but it does. It does. So, yeah.
So, is there? You talked about something just then that a bit of a revelation for me. So, just having the abundance of other voices is being reassuring. That's something I haven't thought about, right? Because my assumption is that your assumption or anybody else's assumption is that most people are not racist, all right? And so, but when something like this happens, and there is, this young man is murdered in the street, right? The two men who did it, and then somebody else at least saw it and videoed it. And the law enforcement had the video, right, all this time, and it wasn't until it was released, got put out there in the culture, this was months ago, that, other people get involved and these guys get arrested. Then I see, okay, it's easy to think there's a lot of people involved in this not coming to bear, not coming to light, that justice is not done. Justice is not done in this situation. And I think maybe for the first time, because when I say, I can do a Facebook post, because sometimes I just think those people are just virtue signaling, and but I think it was a bit of a revelation just then, Kayla, that just to hear all those other voices go, yeah, we're not on that side. we disagree. That is unjust. I mean, that's
everything you know goes out the window.
It's helpful.
Like, to put it into perspective, yesterday was my nephew's birthday. He just turned 5. Yesterday was also Ahmad's birthday. He would have been 26. And that was a really hard reality for me to face, is that this man, yes, he's just one person in this large world, but his death has signified, like, it signaled something in my brain of, like, this could happen to Junior.
Exactly.
When he's 18, when he's 19, when he's 20, he could be seen and painted the same way, profiled the same way Ahmad was. There's nothing in my mind that's stopping that from happening. Yeah. So seeing the voices, seeing people saying stuff, it's like when you're surrounded by those thoughts, it's that little bit of safety. It's that little bit of hope that's like, okay, I see you, like, okay, I got it. Like, it's not everybody. Or it allows me to somehow, like, walk towards the hope again. Because every time this happens for me, it throws me right back.
Yeah,
it throws me right back. And so it allows me to, like, start walking towards that again, and praying towards that again, and knowing that again, and feeling safe in that again. It's like you said, as Christians, the thing that we choose is empathy, compassion, the suffering.
Yeah.
This is not something that we can choose to not deal with. In the same way, there are people who are poor, who are, going through different hard situations, addicts, like things that our church deals with, that they may have chosen, they may have made the choice to go down that path, but we're going to help you, and we're going to help bring you back. How much even more so than someone who didn't choose the struggle that they have.
Exactly.
I have a friend that she was at my house last night, and her little boys all over the house, and she was outraged, like genuinely outraged, and she was like, I just don't understand. Lindsay was like, my kid could shoot up a whole thing and he'll still live, but all he did was run out, and we're like, what do we do? And I was kind of like, but it just kind of reassured me, like, okay, the hope is there. Yeah. We were thrift shopping one time, and there was a record on the wall in this thrift store in Columbus that I won't name, and it had like that, those caricatures with the red lips and all this other stuff. It was just like displayed, and I was like, but I wasn't gonna fight it. Like, I was just like over it. She was like, no, I'm gonna go say something, and she went right up there. That is racist, and just went off. And the fact that she cares enough and it doesn't affect her at all. She's as white as they come, and I love her forever, but it's just like, it restores that hope, like somebody else that it doesn't directly affect is willing to get into that. Like my great grandmother is an example. They were hardcore racist before we were born. I mean, those N-words carry diseases kind of racist. And when we were born, it's like, well, when I was born, because I was born first, and she challenged all of that wiring, everything she'd ever heard, everything. She challenged it, and her kids were mad at her about it. Like, they were like, you taught us this. But she challenged it, and she stood up for us, and she taught us we could be anything, and she did everything opposite. And even though she still had some of that, it would come out every now and then, and I'd be like, it's not right. It's not right. She tried, and she continued to try, and she would befriend people, and she would do stuff to try to reset that part of her mind, and love. She tried. Compelled her to do that. And I feel like God's love compels you to do that, compels you to stand up and say something. It compels you to well, let me just try to figure it out. Let me
Yeah.
just, okay, well, you're not going to judge me if I am kind of racist, so come on, let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
Is this really what this is? Like, you know what I'm
See,
saying? Just that little
exactly.
backdoor conversation
Exactly.
that where I get the thoughts out of my head and I don't surround myself with opinions that speak to what makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? That love, like, I just really believe,
Patricia,
because of my experience, you know, that love is what pushes you to try to get outside of something, no matter how deeply it is, no matter if it was a position that you held or you can transition. Like, you don't have to. You know, in prison, you have to link up with who you look like because it's dire straits. You just have to survive. You know, if we're going to believe that God is God and that He can fill up all this other space. Then we have to put your money where your mouth is. You can't just, you know, sit back here and ride in on the Episcopalian train to heaven. It don't work like that. Sorry if that was offensive.
And the truth is, like, we can't do it alone. We can't overcome. If you look at the civil rights movement, it took a lot of white people in high places
Yes.
to change things.
Yes.
If it was just us out there and we were the only people that cared, we were the only people that were speaking up for ourselves
We wouldn't have
and trying to
gone
change the situation,
over
it
it.
wouldn't have, because they would have just dropped another something else to
Right.
cover up and to keep us in our place. It takes other people of other races in high places to stand with us and to be like, you know what, you're right, this is wrong, and I'm going to help you do something about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of painful to acknowledge for a lot of people. That I remember my mom was telling me a story about this dude who was just like Pan African, like just West End sort of like white people are the devil. Just like my mom was just like, my mom she didn't raise like that, but she said, you know what? You're a hard worker. You do this, you do that. But 9 times out of 10, for the business that you want to start, when you go to that bank, you're going to be standing before someone who looks so much different than you. And my thing is like being conscientious of the reality that you can't do this without people. We can't do this without people who are different from you. Also couples with the reality that you guys, we have got to stop patronizing the fear that Black people have.
Yeah.
We've got to stop. There needs to be a little bit more room for a lot of African Americans to feel the fear. I had someone tell me, perfect love casts out all fear. And just like, there's no reason for you to do this. There's no reason for you to be afraid. There's no reason for you to feel like this. There's no reason for you to feel like that. There's no reason for you to feel like that. And just the coupling with scripture to try to press this idea that what is going on right here is not
It's invalid.
is invalid to the walk of the faith. And I just want to speak to that perfect love does cast out fear. Are you loving me perfectly? Every so often we do things to each other in relationships to where we may say something offhand. We don't know each other's experiences. I'm a man, you're a woman. There are things that I may know. I'm a very loving person. I love to hug people. You don't ever know what a person's experience was like. You don't know what they've dealt with. You don't know the pain that they've had to endure to get to where they are then. And if they wince at me, I cannot I can be like, well, why did you do that? You should understand that I love you. You should understand that you shouldn't feel this. You shouldn't feel that.
Validate their
and
pain.
just from my own memory or whatever, just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't, and having to kind of buckle down. It just like, we've got to stop doing that. If you offend your brother. If you offend him, why is the question in church? It's always in church. I'm going to say this. It's always in church. When you offend your brother, we don't humble ourselves. We try to justify ourselves.
Whoa, yeah.
And that's what Lucifer feels justified
Whoa.
in his regard to God. And it's in that justification that such a perversion and a lack of compassion is born. And it breeds pride and arrogance to where you can't even see another person for what they really are. And I just really want to just kind of like pinpoint on that aspect, that if you do something, it doesn't have to even be in a racial sense, in any sense.
Yeah.
And someone says, this hurts me or this harms me, Stop telling them to get over it. You mod yourself for their sake. You take a step back out of yourself for their sake. Choose humility, and then the unity of the brotherhood, just the cultivation of that compassion and that community of people who really care about each other. Your white kids will see it, your black kids will see it, and you don't even have to really have a really deep conversation about race, because you're dealing in love. And that dissociation that happens because of the lack of that compassion won't be bred in your children. It's your children that this is. What do people say? Children don't look at what you say, they look at what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a young man in church. I was walking into the vestibule, and I had just been talking to, I don't know what we were playing or whatever, but he said, "Hey boy, come here." The whole room, the whole lobby just kind of just like went quiet. For me, one, that just means everyone in this room knows the connotation of what we're dealing with right now. So you're not ignorant. That was the first thing. You're not ignorant because all of you went quiet. Now, I told the little dude, he's probably maybe 11 or 12. I said, I had to say it as I had to couple my mind with like, okay, wait, I'm in church. Okay. This is a little guy.
Yeah.
Okay. But then I think about his dad. I'm like, okay, wait. Does his dad think? What does his dad may think? Like, and I was like, wait. Gotta go back. This is the situation. Hey, little dude. Hey, call me Mr. Joe or call me Cy. Just don't call me boy, okay? Can you do that for me? Can you do that for me? And that's constantly happening on this side. That's always happening. I can hear someone say nigga over and over and over and over and over in the house of God. And yet I have to contain myself when I have to, when there's a need for a release or a sense of safety. Oh, if you don't feel this way, there's something wrong with you because you feel this way. Maybe that's in your heart, or maybe that's something that's in you. And I'm just like, I'm taken aback just taken aback with how easy it is for us as Christians to live in this American world and still call ourselves Christians with the amount of opportunity we have to die to ourselves.
Yeah.
There's too many opportunities for us to really submit ourselves in the logical sense to the Holy Spirit, because we always want to be like Iridebo or like, Carrie Job or Bethel Worship in the room, kind of like. But when it comes to the instances where we have to make a decision to choose ourselves over our inclinations and our own proclivities, it is there, not in worship, not on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But it is there when you have an opportunity to really bloom within yourself the fruits of the Spirit, because you're actively working it out.
And I do want to touch on
Get your
that.
hand up. We got to get to you.
I do, because I was just going to say that the number one, the Word of God says that love covers over a multitude of sins. And then Galatians 5 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. It is gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Yeah. Now, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and its desires. And then he concludes with, if we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit. Let us not become boastful, challenging one another, envying one another. I mean, that is the gospel here. And I just feel like everything that Joe is saying is, humility is key. You need the Spirit in order to operate that way. You need the Spirit in order to be in a room with people who are completely and totally different from you, who have different experiences from you. And if you have questions, or if and if you have just concerns or attitudes, and I feel like that's really what we're like addressing here, not so much just niceness or words, but really attitudes. And I think that's really what Black people in general fear. It's not necessarily like how nice somebody is to us, but man, what is going on the inside of you? Like what is happening here? And this is why I love Jesus. Jesus always addressed the heart of people. He never just touched on behavior modification. Like he really, I mean, if we see the words of Jesus, he says, it is not enough to just commit adultery with a woman. It is, if you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, it's something going on in the heart, right? There's something happening on the inside of that person. And it's the same, because if we read in 1 John 4, he says, if you say that you love God who you have not seen, but you hate your brother who you have seen, then you're basically living a lie. Again.
Yeah, grace doesn't lower the standard; it raises the standard.
It does. It does. And I mean, and that's the point. Is God is wanting He is wanting. Romans 2:2 says, no, don't be. What is it again? I'm trying to remember. I gotta just pull it up.
You said Romans?
Yeah, Romans 12:2. It's very famous scripture.
12:2.
Yep. Again, so it says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be what? Transformed by what? The renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, His perfect will, right? And I think that's what it is. I think that at the end of the day, that God is wanting to change our hearts and our attitudes. And that's what our brothers see. And we know that this is not going to be a perfect thing. And we know that there are going to be some challenges and some hiccups, and people are not always going to say the right things. And that's okay. That's okay. There's grace for that. And there's room for you with those questions and with those hardships. But at the end of the day, my question to you, as the church is, how is God renewing your mind? How is God changing the attitudes of your heart? How are you crucifying the flesh and its passions and its desires in order to be more holy? And so, like, that's all. Like, that's probably like my final thought on the matter, is that I want to love like Jesus, and I want my heart to be broken over the things that His heart is broken over, and I want ultimately for the gospel in my life to be effective. Like, I want it to, if we say that the gospel makes all the difference, if we say that the gospel is what transforms people, it's what makes people whole, then this is the opportunity to practice it. This is the evidence that people are looking for. So the ball is in your court, church. Like, the ball is in your court to really act accordingly. And that's it.
Can I say,
Good.
I think it's also important to make space for something that's different than you are. Like Kayla was saying earlier, or one of y'all was acknowledging the differences. There are differences. I posted a bunch of mixed people not too long ago. Like Trevor Noah, Tracy Ellis Ross, Meghan Markle, like these people, like, in their great accomplishments, right? Growing up, you never saw mixed people doing good stuff. It's one or the other, so I just wanted to kind of bask in that space. And a friend of mine, he is a friend of mine, and he was commenting, like, we're all one human race. Like, basically, you shouldn't be just highlighting that they did good things because of the color of their skin shouldn't be something that you highlight. We're all one human race. And I've known him to tolerate blatant racism from his white friends or just different stuff like that. But it's like, when you don't allow somebody else to have that space to, if you're Native American and this, or like what is Asian Pacific Islander month, and okay, good, like, you know what I'm saying, like, boom, like, let them be diverse and let this be this, like,
And appreciate it.
and appreciate it and value it and give it some of the space, as opposed to saying, no, we're all one, rein all that in. We all need to be on the same sheet of music. You know, it's like
It's controlling.
it's controlling, and it's also it's really you. It's also and look, because I love him. He is great. He does service work. He is a great guy. But I think at a certain degree, like you have to be willing to give of some of your own space to somebody else. You know, you have to be willing to kind of make that sacrifice sometimes, and not just saying, well, everything needs to just be about this, because I feel like that in itself kind of gives an indicator that, you know, sorry, that within itself,
align yourself with
that
an
there's,
ideology, like,
that's an indicator that
yeah.
something's wrong. Like people say, I don't see color. Well, yes,
I'd be
you do.
I'd be like,
you do.
no, I really do try to avoid people.
Yeah,
that,
you
that
acknowledge
like,
it, and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, you one of them.
You
one of them.
okay then? You know what I'm saying? I think it's giving of yourself and giving of space and letting other people have that space. That it's another sacrifice that you just kind of have to be willing to make, and not wanting to enforce something. I really think it's out of some level of resentment. I probably need to hash out my thoughts a little more.
Counselor.
You know, I need to hash out my thoughts a little more to be able to give it more definitively. But I think that's something too. That you know, you have to just like be willing to kind of not get it all right the first time, and be willing to have that dialogue with somebody.
Yeah.
To transition to a more compassionate. Because what I don't want is this conversation to sound like, this is what you should be. This is what you should be. You need to do this. You need to do that. Like, I don't want this conversation to be like that. I want there to be a part of this conversation that we have room to where somebody, if they are completely sympathetic for the two men that were on the truck, and they are completely like, no, this is this. Like, give them a space to be able to transition and not just villainize the other side. Because sometimes people will be like, oh, y'all are on this side, y'all are on that side. The color of your skin makes you on that side. I don't want to hear what you have to say because you don't even want to hear what I have to say. I just want to make it a safe space for people who have a differing opinion, because you can transition. You don't have to just stay a red-blooded American. You know, I get that from my family. That's my cousin. My cousin says that. Yeah. Bobby does that.
Well, once again, that comes in relationship, right? It has to be people spending time
Intimacy.
together.
Intimacy.
That's one thing you can't do over Facebook. You know what I mean?
Right.
It has to be people sitting in the same room, doing stuff together, going to church together.
Yeah.
Right. Well, look, I don't want to keep y'all all day. I really appreciate y'all coming and talk. I think maybe just before we finish up though, is there a thought that needs to come out? For me, I want to go back one more time and just talk about justice. Because I think it's something that maybe we don't think enough about as Christians, that God wants justice. I mean, you go back and you read the Old Testament prophets, and there is a desire and a passion in the heart of God for justice, and for those who are in power to oppress or to mistreat those who are weaker. God cannot stand it. No. God cannot. He despises it. And you know, of course, you know, the most famous passage in Amos, you know, let justice roll down. You know? But you go back in that passage, right? You go further up there, and he talks about how what's happening in your courts offends me, right? And because of that, your worship offends me. It's a stench to me. And so there should be, and I think this is something we have to remind ourselves of, especially those of us who, you know, are just affected different. Our emotions are affected differently. We have to remind ourselves that if there is not justice happening around us, that also should hurt our heart. Absolutely. It should offend in the same way that a loss of life is a brokenness, it's a wrong. When there is injustice, when you're struck with the fact that this happened in February and it took a video coming out for these men to be arrested, that should offend you. Absolutely. That should make you have a righteous anger boil up inside of you that this was not just, right? And without the video, it would have an injustice would have gone on, this mother would have never had any possibility that her son, would have some justice in this situation. So I think we need to remind ourselves of that as Christians, because that is a theme in the Bible that needs to be addressed. So, and anything on that, or just any other closing thoughts?
I just wanted to. I always go back to Scripture. Like, that's just where I live.
Good.
That's good.
I'm for that.
So I wanted to share out of Ephesians 2. And we have to understand, like, in the New Testament, when the Jews were talking about Jews and Gentiles, like, that in a way was definitely a racial issue going on. And so Paul says it best. And I just want to read Ephesians 2, starting in verse 16. And it says, by his death on the cross, Christ destroyed their enmity. By means of the cross, he united both races into one body and brought them back to God. So Christ came and preached the good news of peace to all, to you Gentiles who were far away from God, and to the Jews who were near to him. It is through Christ that all of us, Jews and Gentiles, are able to come in the one Spirit into the presence of the Father. Like, and I don't know, that's just the scripture that I just marinate on when I feel like anger and bitterness and resentment like stirring up in me, is that Christ on the cross destroyed the enmity. He, by means of the cross, he united both of the races. And so I just want to leave y'all with that.
Yeah, brought down that dividing wall, and
He did.
although we still, it's like we see in part now, right?
Yeah.
Then we'll see fully. There is that hope.
Amen.
That it is coming down. It is coming down brick by brick, and when Jesus returns, it will no longer exist at all. Hard for us to imagine, but all these thoughts that we have to worry about now won't be there anymore. There will be just celebration in who we are, and not fear or shame or any other closing thoughts. I just want to give everybody an opportunity, and
I want to say to the Black community to not be afraid of not embracing, but what are the words I'm trying to say? Don't be afraid of the white community. Don't be afraid of white people. Don't be afraid to hear them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to hear what they have to say and to hear, because Patricia, I'm sure you get a lot of this too from the Black community, the criticism of being at a white church or predominantly white church versus being at a predominantly Black church. Like, that's a constant theme for me. And that's something that is brought up a lot to me, but I want to encourage the Black community that change does not come by sitting on the outside.
True.
Change does not come by just being in your space that's it.
Yeah.
Because you're wanting them to see things our way, but you have to understand it from their way as well. It's like you were saying how with your grandmother, she's been taught a certain thing. She was taught lies about Black people. That was something that was a part of her and ingrained in her. And it wasn't until she had you in her life to love on and to have a relationship with that she had the opportunity to challenge those things.
Ooh, that's
so
good.
If we are staying over here,
we don't get a chance to
never
challenge
get the
them.
opportunity to even challenge themselves.
That's good.
And it's not us whitewashing, and it's not us, choosing one part over the other, or watering down racism, or watering down the oppression, or just going over to their side. You know what I mean? Because like you said, Joe, we are also Christian.
We're Christian.
In the same way they're called to go over to our side,
Yes.
we're called to go over to their side.
Both of us.
Both of us. It works together. So I want to leave that with, people who are watching that are feeling that hurt. Yes, feel your hurt, because it's justified.
Yes.
Like we said, it's justified to feel that hurt. It is right to want justice in this situation, but do not automatically approach white people as the enemy.
Yes.
Don't automatically have that filter.
Yeah.
on them. Because we have it works from both sides. you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Joshua 1:9 says, "Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage.
Yeah.
Be not afraid, neither thou be dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee wheresoever you go." And just want to throw that out there for white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, that like when you're dealing with those situations, like piggybacking off of what Kayla said, meeting in that place. When it comes time for you to say what needs to be said, be courageous.
Right.
Because if they're gonna choose you this day. Once you're able to be courageous, you allow a person to make a decision to either grow or die.
Yes.
And that's our responsibility as Christians to, one, be honest with God, be honest with ourselves, and be honest with each other.
Amen.
So the final thing that I would like to say is to examine your own heart, and that's for everybody on both sides, because resentment is the number one offender for you guys. I understand what that means, and for everybody else. This would be a great time to express your resentment, your personal resentments onto a justified bigger issue. So racism is horrible, and it's a justified platform to express resentment. But if the resentment is not just about that issue, like if you haven't forgiven your mom, you haven't forgiven your dad, you haven't forgiven your husband, you haven't forgiven your wife, you haven't forgiven people that have done horrible things to you in your childhood, you haven't forgiven your teachers. If you have unforgiveness and you allow it to be expressed through this horrible nationwide situation, you are still responsible for dealing with this resentment. So this is a time that it may have flared up enough for you to be able to see where it is. So as we are supposed to present our hearts to Christ, present everything to God, this is a great opportunity for you to use this in whatever degree that you're using it, to find your own internal motivations, to be able to give that over to God, to have the conversation with God. Intense emotion is a great time for something on the inside of you to turn red so that you can surrender that. So that's my final thought is use this time, use these conversations, use this difficult stuff to relieve yourself of that unforgiveness that's in your heart, because if you have not forgiven, you will not be forgiven. And that's in the
Bible.
That's in the prayer, that's in the that's in the Bible. So I just want to throw that out there because it is helpful. It would be helpful for your peace if you let the peace of God guide you, pursuing that peace, contending against the enemy, contending against the ways of the world. Like the Canaanites were supposed to be eradicated. They were supposed to completely push out all of the Canaanites, but the Israelites did not completely do that. They made small compromises. They turned them into servants. They did these small little things to kind of have the Canaanites intermixed with them. And so if you look at that by issues of the heart, resentment and prejudices and attitudes, because prejudice is an attitude by definition. So push those things out if we're going to present ourselves wholly to Christ. So that's all I have for my final thought.
Awesome. Well, Josiah, thank you. Reese, thank you. Patricia.
Of course.
Kayla. My final thought is going to be this, that you've shared that with me before, the getting some feedback negative about, being black in a white church or, and, I don't know anything breaks my heart more. I mean, because I get real selfish about it, because I go, what if that pressure took her away from our friendship, or that breaks my heart. So, anyway, thank y'all.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Love you, Matt.
Love you.
Yeah, man.
Love you. You guys are great. I really appreciate you. We're going to get out of here. Y'all wave bye to everybody.
Bye.
All right. Thank y'all.